How are you doing today, Artie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Little started the morning a little late, kind of threw me off. Just trying to get back on track, right?
That's all right. We're all good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to kind of just explain what you do for a living and how we kind of came across each other and
Yeah.
what you want to be talking about today?
My name is Ari. I've been a sports and injury rehab therapist for about 27 years, functional medicine consultant. I've done pretty much everything in the industry from the physical scientific side of sports and injury rehabilitation all the way through clinical hypnotherapy, EFT, tantra work. I mean, I've gone through kind of the gamut of modalities over the course of the years. And these days, I do a lot more speaking and consulting and teaching versus one-on-one clients. Also, I do create some pretty amazing retreat experiences as well.
Nice.
But how you and I met was via Twitter, I believe. Funny enough,
Yes, absolutely.
and you had been interested in what I had talked about with one of my previous guests on my show, with regard to, I think, the psychedelics and trauma work. And
Absolutely, yes.
based on your history, you had asked, to have me on the show and have that discussion.
Yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Ari's actually, as you guys can tell, he's a renowned professional in his field, and this isn't just because before it was me just talking from experience, right? So it honestly, like from the outside looking in, it did sound like a lot of spiritual pseudoscience mumbo jumbo, but but actually, right? If people have never heard of alternate modalities of healing, homeopathic therapy, other kinds of work for the body, mind, and soul, they literally write it off as cuckoo. So it's when you juxtapose it, I guess, next to the scientific method, like actual science, it adds validity to it. So that's why I'm really grateful for Ari for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the science. In my opinion, every single experience or thing can be explained scientifically. It's just a matter of whether we know the language yet or not, right? How to speak that language. But I think that everything is very explainable on a scientific level. It's just a matter of most people don't know how to get lost in translation. They don't know how to translate the language.
Yes, absolutely. And it's lesser, the fact of the matter has become that they're two opposing sides of the same coin as opposed to they're two different perspectives of the same thing, right? Which I feel like it really should be, because recently, like in places like Colorado, Denver, Arizona, and then Netherlands, all these like places are now decriminalizing psilocybin specifically for medicinal use, and it's like they now understand not only the purpose for these medicines, I would call them, in a medicinal industry, but they also understand that along with the clinical studies they have going on, like therapy, psychotherapy, all these things, along with microdosing psilocybin mushrooms or taking them in a, like you were talking about earlier, a retreat basis, they have very, very big success rates, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, the success rate, I was on a call with the University of Pennsylvania, their psychology department. They just did, I think, a ketamine study with 200 suicide patients. And after 2 years, they had 0 suicides. That's a 100%,
wow,
experience. Let's just call it an experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's 200 suicidal patients after 2 years with 0 suicides. That's pretty massive, right?
That's very massive, actually.
This whole world is on the verge of folding in on itself, right?
Yeah, literally.
So what I say, that entropy of falling in on itself is, we started off with ancient practices that we're moving back towards, because now we spent about 100 years scientifically explaining away stuff and trying to isolate and trying to take everything out of its natural state and measure it and test it, which as we could tell, the results have been less than desirable in
Very.
in humans manipulating nature, right?
Absolutely.
Results are less than desirable. However, we've gotten a lot of knowledge from this study, and that knowledge allows us to then take the ancient practices and move them into a scientific basis. And that's what we see coming in the next 10 years, I think, is going to be the science is going to be able to explain nature, because we're going to stop with the isolation of things and start looking at the macro levels and testing the macros. What is this synergistic thing in the apple that makes the apple so powerful? Because we know it's not just the sugar or just the fiber or just
absolutely
right. There's something in that sum total.
Many constituents of the same whole that are just as vital to the whole as the constituent is, right? Like, for example, like it's looking through life through a lens of, like, I guess, holistic nature, right? And understanding that, like, we are all constituents of a greater whole, and that whole itself has an amalgamation of different energies. But really quickly, what you said earlier about how human beings have kind of been explaining away with science for the last 100 years, and we're moving back towards ancient practices, I absolutely agree, because most definitely we are regressing as a society. We're not progressing. It may look like that with the shiny bells and whistles, but it's like we are definitely regressing. We're regressing to, like, ancient, barbaric, and prehistoric times. And just because there's a little copper, steel, titanium, people think it's like, oh, it's so nice. It's like it's the future and the flying cars, and it's like, no, like, we are really regressing to the point in society, like even something as simple as what we're discussing in terms of psychedelic medicinal use, like mushrooms, that has been like ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin. These have been ancient rituals that have been held for thousands of years. And only recently, with, I guess, indigenous people and, like, people of the rainforest and everything, they're being discredited. We're moving back towards that now. And then, like you were saying earlier, the ketamine, the heroin patients using DMT and ayahuasca, and the success rates have been crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the success of the success of the ancients. There's a reason why we didn't have, like, drug issues and alcohol issues and all those things back,
right?
Thousands of years ago. That we had drinking. Oh yeah, we had drinking. We had opium. We had all those things.
Yep. It was dens and everything,
like a medicine. So there's a big difference in my world between drug use and medicine use.
Okay.
You have the same substance be a drug and be a medicine.
Right? The difference being the intention.
It's a matter of, and it could be the same dosage, but different people.
Literally.
Or different dosage, different people. Same dosage, same person, different time, right?
Yeah.
Medicine is about taking something that is, right? So we are in a state that is, and we want to enhance it. We want to create something better or enhance it, fix what's going on, right? So we take a medicine to enhance our immune system. We take a medicine to enhance the functioning of our adrenal glands or our nervous system, of our immune system. We take something, medicine. That could be a food, which is, food is probably the best medicine when grown correctly or grown well, right?
Yeah.
But medicine is food. Medicine is a substance that enhances. The drug is anything that you do that is beyond the necessary amount.
Yeah.
Right. So whether that's eating 5 watermelons in a row, right?
That could be a drug.
That's now become a drug.
Yeah.
Okay. Versus eating a few slices, right? Which is medicine. Yeah. And having that be something like, okay, I'm having this medicine and I know that it's going to take me about an hour to absorb all the nutrients from this medicine that I'm taking. I know that I'm going to have this experience from eating this food or this drug or this whatever, this substance. So it's just a difference in perspective, I guess. Drugs are anything that we do that is
habits too,
excessive or attempting to create a response that is not natural, right? Is not a natural response.
That's very, very
So
well put,
like
yeah.
if I'm gonna do what, let's say, let's in psilocybin, what we've called a hero's dose,
Yep.
right?
Familiar with that.
Okay. But I'm not ready for a hero's dose. I'm not mentally and prepared for a hero's dose. I haven't got the right situation, the right people around me, the
Environment.
right guides. I'm just doing a hero's dose because my ego says I could take that much.
Hmm.
Are you doing a drug or are you doing medicine?
That's a drug at that point, because again,
That
like
that becomes a drug.
yeah, because even another distinguishing factor would be intention, right? It's like I'm gonna take 7 grams to sit in a dark, like dimly lit place, so I could go internally and seek out what's bothering me. Maybe do some shadow work, understand like why I am the way I am, rewire my brain, and then there's like, hey man, let's eat 7 grams of mushrooms on a Saturday. Like, there's a difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong, by the way, with taking a medicine for what it's necessary. Like a hero's journey is sometimes very necessary, right?
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
like going and to like say Burning Man and doing psilocybin and having fun can be medicine. It can be the relief, the release, the letting go that is absolutely necessary. But you have to have discernment and you have to have discipline and you have to be able to, and maturity level to know what the difference is, right?
Yeah.
When that difference is important. Because you could look at kids all day long taking mushrooms and they'll never get the spiritual side of that
No.
because they're taking a drug. And then you
Yeah.
can go to, a shamanic journey and watch 20 people going through powerful darkness
Hmm.
and see them come out on the light and completely changed as human beings,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Ever. And that can be on the same medicine. So how do you distinguish between which one you're doing? Are you doing the drug? Are you doing the medicine? Are you taking this in a respectful, spiritual, ancient, sacred way? Or are you taking
Exactly.
it as a party?
Yeah. Because again, like that's a very good point. These things are, I guess, interpreted as drugs because of how they've been like kind of played out to be. But like they deserve respect. They deserve reverence for like what they're not only able to do, but for what they have been doing for millions of years. And it's like this is an ancient life form, literally, that we are ingesting. Psilocybin and fungus, they're connected. It's a living organism, and it's like it deserves respect and reverence because it's ancient wisdom, right? It's the wisdom of the universe, of the world that we're getting through this plant, and it's like it deserves respect, and people don't understand that. But it's interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, what's funny to me, I just
Yeah.
saw a documentary last night, Fantastic Fungi or something like that. It
Oh
was
yeah, yeah. I've heard of
um,
that. Yeah.
on Netflix, and the largest organism on the planet is a
The
mushroom,
mycelium. Yeah,
right?
mycelium mushroom. It's crazy.
It's over 2.25 miles long in Oregon. This
Gee.
one single network
Of cells and
of
pathways.
cells, right? And webbing and root system. It's now been found as the oldest. They've actually found inside fossilized volcano, they found an image of mushroom, fossil of mushroom. So older than we are on the planet.
Oh wow.
But what's interesting is what they believe is that mushrooms they came on a asteroid, right?
Really?
And spread throughout the entire surface. So you can like step on a foot size of earth in the old growth forest, and you're going to be like stepping on 100,000 spores of fungi, right? There's more varieties of fungus than there are any other plant life, which I found fascinating.
Why is that?
Just because basically fungus eats everything else.
Interesting.
Right? So something falls, a piece of wood falls in the forest, and the fungus comes up to eat that wood and basically set it back to the earth for regrowth.
Yeah.
Fungus is that powerful of a thing. That's its job. So it was interesting to watch this documentary because I'm looking at it like they go through the language center. So we didn't have language before psilocybin, at least according to some theories in this documentary. We had noise.
Wow.
We couldn't understand each other's noises. Psilocybin lit up that section of brain that allowed us to understand. We now can not only understand noise, but we can shape noise into
and have coherent conversation.
Right. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Lights up that part of your brain. Lights up the neural pathways in a way that's kind of cool. Our
the default mode network
brain, right, are designed the same exact way as mycelium network. So look at the neural connection between the mycelium network, and then you look at the neural connection between our brain and neural pathways. Same. Lights up.
Really?
And so we're talking about some ancient thing, right, that has been utilized, not just the psychedelic versions, but all of the medicinal mushrooms, like lion and reishi, and all of this is medicinal. All of this is being used now. They're making proteins out of it. Very high, rich, meats can be made from mushrooms, and so
like plant-based.
It's not just the psychedelic aspect, although that is a fantastically amazing experience. I was watching an MD on his podcast, Z-Dog MD, very traditional, I would say, in his medical practice. And he was talking about going to school in Berkeley, and he thinks that every single doctor should do mushrooms at least once, or LSD.
Wow.
Have the experience of it.
Interesting. Okay.
Of what it teaches about the body, what it teaches about the universe, and about expanding you out of that very narrow, limited
belief system.
Medicine.
Absolutely, I agree. It's very interesting, Ari, that you mentioned LSD as well. I'll let you finish. I understand. Sorry to cut you off. I understand you're not done, but yeah, let's touch on that after that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I find it fascinating because what we're finding in this new world, right, is that the things that you can't stop, right? You can't stop weed from growing.
No.
Ever, right? No matter how illegal you make it, you're not going to stop fungus from growing on the planet.
No,
you can't stop it from growing. And people are going to be interested in what it is from the beginning. You might as well study it. You might as well take this amazing world that we have and just ask a lot of questions, right?
Understand it.
Questions you ask, the more questions you'll have. I find it's not the more questions you ask, the more answers you'll have. It's the more questions you'll have. Every time I ask a question, I get 20 more roads that I can go down, right? And so asking the right questions and utilizing these substances, right, for medicine. And I know that your audience has heard your story, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that your story is absolutely like the pinnacle of possibility if used correctly, these medicines. You were doing this mostly on your own, not with a guide, not with a coach.
A guide or no.
Somebody, a therapist, right? On your own.
It's pure intention.
But imagine had you had somebody else to guide you through that experience, how much further, how much faster you would have gone,
It would
right?
be a lot less scary too.
A lot less scary,
Yeah.
a lot more. A lot less. I just a lot more powerful,
Yeah.
a lot more windows that you can't see
Yeah.
because you got your
On
blind
your own.
spots.
Absolutely.
A lot of windows that other people can see can get addressed as well. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. I find it wonderful that we're creating and moving into a world where people are saying, no, 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 no. This is where we need to go. And we're kind of stopping this authoritarian need to be led. You know, there is
Mhm.
a need for that at points in time. But if you imagine, we're as a nation, we're about close to 245 years old, almost 250, right? 250 years is about the length of time for most empires to last.
Yeah, and the U.S. is an empire. It is an
Yeah.
empire.
So if we
Yeah.
want our empire to last and
Mhm.
grow and create new, then we have to be willing to delve into the places we're not willing to delve, like our own darkness. As a
Exactly.
country, as a nation, as an empire, as a people, we have to be willing to dive headlong into our darkness without judgment, without saying, oh, I'm bad for having this in my history, with just saying,
Yeah.
this is what the facts are. And now we can create something different with what we now know. And rather than the shame or blame or anything else, just go, okay, here's where we're at. We created that. Cool. Now we have new information and new technology to create something different.
I absolutely agree with that. I really, really agree with that. And it's also because what you said about like diving headlong into your own darkness, that's the most one, it's most powerful thing ever. And two, it's very important. Even at like some stage in your developmental life, right? Like as a young adult, an older person, whatever it is, like if you don't face your darkness, your vices will consume you. And however dark your vices are, whatever they are for a person, like they will end up consuming you because you don't understand why you're feeling that way. You don't understand what you're escaping, and you don't understand why you need why you need to feel something to mask whatever it is you're constantly feeling. And then the whole thing with the hero's journey comes back because I was not quote unquote ready for a hero's journey, but I actually, so my story really quick. I was addicted from the ages of 17 to 24 to cocaine, pills, and alcohol. And August 26, 2019, 2 years ago, I went to rehab. I got back from rehab and I started about 2 months in, I started popping a couple pills. I said, you know what, this is not where I want to go. I'm going to go back down the same path. So I got some mushrooms. And I don't know why I thought it was a great idea just to put 7 grams in a peanut butter sandwich and chow it on a Tuesday night. But it was the, it was a turning point of my life because I was not prepared for, I was just literally doing it to get fucked up, mind you. My intentions were not to heal, to understand myself. It was literally to get high. And then what ended up happening is that the mushrooms, they put me on my ass and said, hey, look, you have a lot of shit to deal with. And the most important thing is that I didn't know that I was subconsciously dealing with these thoughts, these emotions, these feelings that I couldn't physically process. So they manifested into other forms like drug abuse, anger, mood swings. And it's like, I didn't understand why until I woke up off the mushrooms and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm still thinking about stuff like this. And I'm still like, a lot of the issues were brought to light. And then because they were brought to light, I was able to work on them and say, hey, so this is why I do this. And I have validation issues for this, codependency issues, whatever it is. And over time, after a bit, I started microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. And that was honestly the biggest turning point in rewiring my mind. I quit cigarettes, alcohol, every kind of dark vice you can imagine. I quit for about 2 years. And then it's so interesting how after that, I started getting into LSD microdosing. And then that just did wonders for my creativity. So all these things that are literally written off as drugs, as things that give you mental illness, as things that anything that is outside the norm we accept and believe and is outside the matrix, quote unquote, that we're given on a day-to-day basis is wrong. And understanding that I have to do what's best for me, regardless of whatever circumstance there is. If it's illegal or not, was the biggest factor, because now I am such an avid like believer and supporter of natural psychedelics, natural medicines, that like it helped me, and I know it can help others.
Yeah.
So I kind of rambled there for a bit.
Let me
Sorry, go.
interrupt you a second. So tell the audience though something, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You're taking a drug to get off of drug use, drug abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay?
drug abuse, literally.
So this is something really powerful. I want people to, understand, your
Absolutely.
audience especially. Okay, you're not taking a drug to get off drugs. That was a medicine for a medicinal reason, right? To
Absolutely.
get off of drug for a drug addiction, right? So here, this is something I've had a lot of conversations with people about, like taking. A lot of people are taking kratom to get off of opiates.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
MDMA.
okay, well, you're just replacing one with another, or
Mm-hmm.
MDMA, for
Ketamine.
I mean, ketamine for suicide, for pain, for
Yeah.
all kinds of things. So I just want to like, for the people who go, he's taking a drug to get off drugs, that doesn't make sense. It's not that. Drug addiction, not medicine use. And so this kind of goes back to where I was at the beginning. I just wanted to kind of address that.
No, absolutely.
About that.
Well, I appreciate it's the discernment. Sorry, it's the discernment, right? And even so, like what you said about taking a drug to get off a drug. The craziest part is the reason I did this is in rehab, that they were just feeding me. They were pouring pills down my throat every morning, every night, every evening, giving me nicotine patches, giving me stuff to stabilize my mood, and like I just felt like a vegetable. Like I felt like I was not in control. It's crazy. I was not in control of my body, my emotions, my dietary functions. Like they were scheduled around the pills. It was crazy. I felt like I was a byproduct of a mental institution. And then I looked around and I said, I am literally in the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And that kind of got to me. I'm like, okay, this is not where I want to be. This is not the path I want to go down, because I was talking to the other people that came into the same rehab facility, third time, fifth time, sixth time, eighth time. And I'm thinking they're at my first time. I'm like, okay, well, what's the common underlying factor? Is that one, they just give you a little band-aid for your boo-boo. Say, oh, don't worry, it's, the blood's gonna dry up, just get out. And then boom. And then when you go back outside, it's like, oh wait, they didn't deal with the underlying issues. Right. And then you're back in, you're back out, you're back in, you're back out. And it's just like, once you open Pandora's box, you have to be ready to kind of go through every single thing there. Otherwise, it'll consume you again.
Right. Yeah. I've had one of my guests on my show is Doug McGurk, and Doug used to run 3 of the top rehab centers in Miami.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Back long ago and far away, there was, this guy, Timothy Leary, psychotherapist, right? And Nixon said to him, "You are enemy number one. You, Timothy Leary, psychotherapist, proposing LSD to the masses. Enemy number one."
It's free thought.
Think about it, right? Free thought is enemy number one.
Scary.
Healthy mentality, enemy number one. This goes into kind of a conspiracy, I guess, theory, but
we are pro-conspiracy here.
Right. So here's where I don't like conspiracy theories when they go beyond intention, because when they go beyond fact into intention.
Yeah.
Because as long as you stay within facts, you don't have a theory. You just have facts.
Exactly.
The only time you add the theory part is when you give an intention to somebody's motivation, right? So Nixon's motivation could have been to, hit, like, his kid was on drugs and he needed to get him off of drugs, and so he made it enemy number one for the United States. Who knows? Any number of intentions could be possible with making this enemy number one. My point is that we're now 50 years later, and we still have had this be enemy number one. And so in 50 years, have we learned anything? And what I'm gathering by the conversations that I've been having lately, by the conversations that others are having lately, is that we have made this much progress in 50 years. And the only part of that piece of progress is it went from illegal to now it's legal to study again.
Yeah.
Mostly legal, but legal to study again. Okay.
Hmm.
So here's where we want to go to the evolution of medicine, at least in my opinion, mental health wise. Okay.
Yeah.
Trauma does not live in your mind.
It was in the body.
It lives in the physical soma, in the body, right?
Yes, I
Trauma
absolutely
lives in
agree.
your body. So why are we talking to our issues, to our traumas? Why are we talking to it? Why are we
Wow.
trying to understand it cognitively? What does it matter? Cognitive behavioral
Cognitive
therapy. What does it matter? I know I was raped and molested and I have issues with relationships. I know that.
Mhm.
Cognitive
Okay.
behavioral therapy doesn't change the fact that when I get into the depths of a relationship and something happens to trigger that reptilian brain, that I don't go right
Mhm.
back to the programming.
Yeah,
Unless
the
the programming
conditioning.
is gone. Unless the programming is gone. So where do you program? So this is a processor. It processes information. The nervous system sends the signals. That's the electrical wiring and the channels of information going from place to place. But the memory bank is in your body. It's in your hard drive, right? So if we're not
Absolutely.
addressing trauma where it lives, we will never get to the depths of that trauma because it lives in your
Wow.
body. And so body work
Absolutely.
combined with the psychedelic is the next frontier, in my opinion, of research. We've got
So
to get
body
to
work.
a place where you're literally digging into the trauma, into the scar tissue, into the body,
Oh, okay.
where the shit lives, in order to drive it out, in order to get it out of the fat, and in order to drive it out of the
Yes.
circulatory system, in order to get it through oxygenation and all that, we've got to drive this shit out. Because why? Our DNA, our genes, our cells rejuvenate every few years completely, some organs every few months,
Mhm.
but yet we still rejuvenate the same injuries, the same scar tissue, the same stuff until we drive it out. And the only way I've seen in 27 years to drive that stuff out of a body is literally physically. You got to move it. Energy and motion, emotion. It's got to
Emotion.
move.
Yeah.
Got to get that motion in the body out of the body. You got to get the noise. You got to get the breath. 80% of all fat loss is in breath work. You think
Wow.
that breath work is not important to fat loss, to trauma, right? You got to breathe. You got to go through that rebirthing, that
Yeah.
movement
Literally.
of
Literally.
energy in order to get the toxic traumas out of your fat. That's where they live, right? So let's say you did 15 minutes of pure breath meditation while on psychedelic compared to just doing it not on psychedelic. How much further, deeper, farther could you get, right? Let's say we do primal screaming, just raw, driving our bodies, scream loud, energy, get that motion. How often do you see people do that until it's like just time for them to blow up? Just to do that normally on a daily basis, right? But when you can do that while on the psychedelics, it tends to have, in my experience, has a very exponential and more permanent shift in the character of
Absolutely.
that person and their experience of life, right? Now,
Absolutely.
this is 27 years of me doing stuff. This is having gone to peyote ceremonies when I was 15, on reservations, going through San Pedro, going through, medicine ceremonies at a very young age, because I hung out on reservations. But this is from somebody who's also done drugs to run and hide from shit.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. Like, I can't even take most prescription meds on a regular basis.
No.
I can't, like, I wouldn't even consider, like, say, doing mushrooms every single day.
No, I can't fathom that. But like in a phase of my life, that was my life. Like every 2 or 3 days, yeah, let's do some mushrooms. And the craziest thing to think, Ari, is that once I kind of did all the shadow work, I rewired my brain, I did the microdosing, the heroes dose. I actually realized that after a 7-year battle with cocaine, pills, and alcohol, I never liked drugs. Like never once did I actually say, "Hey, I enjoy this." It's like looking back, it was the most self-induced traumatic period of my life. And looking back, I would not have done it had it not been such a momentary and immediate fix for my like long-term issues. It's like I hate drugs. I don't even drink now because of personal reasons, because it does nothing for you, right? So it's like I really, really hate drugs, and understanding that used to do those things just to cope really opened my eyes differently about addiction, because it's like addiction. I heard this on a video the other day I was watching. Addiction is it's not for the weak. It's not people that deal with their problems bad. It's a temporary fix for eternal suffering, right? And everyone suffers differently, but like, and everyone has different vices they use to deal with them. But the most important thing is that this is an immediate fix we can go back to as a crutch constantly, and that's what turns drug use into drug abuse, and turns drug abuse into behavioral addiction.
Yeah. So I had a medicine man I used to do sweat lodges with. And he said, okay. I asked him once why all the shamans that I met smoked cigarettes. Okay. And he said, for the white people, it reminds you to breathe because you don't have enough breath in you, which is why you were white. I mean, everybody's got their opinions, but
that's an interesting one. I've heard that.
But really, it's all about prayer, right? So you're breathing in a prayer, you're blowing the prayer out. So you put a prayer into your tobacco, you blow the prayer up, and you hope that it comes back. He also said, because he kind of completed the thought, he said, never ask somebody ever to do anything different than they're doing currently, unless you're willing to take on every single responsibility that person has in this world, because you don't know what's keeping them alive. That cigarette may be the one thing keeping them alive.
Yeah.
In that moment. And when I heard that, it struck me deeply, because how many times do we shame people? Do we tell people don't do
for vices?
Yeah, you have vices, you have addictions, you have this. If we know, like you say, that internal suffering is the cause of addiction, right? Then what do we do to take away the internal suffering of the person? That's a question I don't much hear asked in rehab facilities. That's a question I don't much hear asked in friend groups when they're intervening on somebody's behalf. I don't hear them saying, how can I alleviate some of your stress,
your pain? How can I give you
stop doing what you're doing? And
because I don't like it.
Because I'm uncomfortable with it. I'm uncomfortable with that behavior. I'm uncomfortable with you doing this. I'm uncomfortable with you feeling this way. So because I'm uncomfortable, you have to stop what you're doing to survive. That's my judgment on you. You must stop what you're doing to survive because I don't like it.
And it's a very, very valid point, because looking back, and as much, as bad as it sounds, it's actually very true that rehabilitation is a very profitable business, extremely profitable, and it's literally profiting off the misery of people. And the fact of the matter is that people don't ask these questions about how can I alleviate your stress or how can I help, is because they don't assume it's the problem on that level. It's just like, hey, you like drugs too much, you need to stop, man, because I don't like them. And it's like, well, fuck. Like, but the most interesting part about what you said, I think, is how all these vices that people live with on a day-to-day basis, we're shamed for them. We're shamed for addiction, for drug use, that no one ever took the time, or I guess even if people did, it's no one ever took the time to understand that these issues are different for everyone. So that's why a cookie cutter, and like, this is very clearly, I'm gonna say, this is not a shot at anyone that AACA or NA has helped, because if it's helped you find your peace, get off of drugs, be sober, and enjoy life, I am all for it. But one thing I noticed is, because I came back from rehab September 2019, and I was going to weekly and different monthly like AACA, NA groups. I was on my shit. Like, I was going to a meeting almost every day for the first month. And then like the second month in, I looked around, I'm like, bro, these people are fucking miserable. Like, they hate their fucking, no, like all jokes aside, they hate their lives because they found so much livelihood in the temporary relief that they got from these drugs. That's the only time they felt alive. And that's okay, but there's a difference between being clean and being sober and then being dry. A lot of these people were just dry in the sense they weren't using drugs, but being sober is when you find purpose in life and say, hey, I want to live a healthy life, right? Being clean is, it's like, I'm going to commit to my best stuff. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do what's good for me. Well, a lot of these people in NACA, AA, rehabilitation, detox, whatever it is, they were dry. They were dry because they realized that, hey, if I keep doing drugs, I'm going to fucking die. And I can't die. So it's like, it's really sad to see that people get shunned so much that they would rather live a life of pain. And pain in the sense that, how do I explain this? Like, if you enjoy doing drugs and that's how you want to go, that's your choice, right? But living a day-to-day without understanding why you're doing it and why you have to absolutely commit to it on a lifelong like level is the difference, I think, and why people don't go back.
Right. I think that people are one of two things: scared too much of death or scared too much of life.
Wow.
Okay. One of two things.
Okay.
I wish we could add the third one in, which is love more than both of those things. Okay. But unfortunately, for the majority, it's one of these two. I fear death or I fear life. And so either I'm not going to live, I'm going to avoid, I'm going to be safe, I'm going to,
take no risks.
That divert risk, exactly, risk mitigation. Or I'm going to do things that will basically cause me to come up against that fear of death.
Okay.
Either way, you're creating the thing that you're most afraid of, right? So, when does love come into play? The question I have for people is, when do you ask? Am I willing to do fear, or am I willing to do love? Which one am I willing to go through? Fear of love, by the way, is more powerful than fear of death or fear of life.
Why?
Because fear of love means we're invested in an outcome of somebody else's. We're invested in how somebody feels about us. We're invested in something. When you don't,
has nothing to do with us.
Right. When you fear life or fear death, you're not invested in anything. You're just in fear.
Yeah.
Love, though, right, causes us the most fear, because love creates the most trauma. Because
love or lack thereof,
love brings up everything unlike love.
What do you
So,
mean by that?
well, okay, so you got a cup of coffee.
Okay.
And you got a cup of water. How much water do you need to pour into that cup of coffee before there's no more coffee left, only love or only water? Sorry.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing. How much love do you have to pour into a cup of fear before all of that fear is gone? There's always going to be a little remnant of the fear, right?
Dilution, yeah.
So here's the thing. When you pour love into something, everything that's going to come back at first is going to be the opposite of love. You're going to get back the trauma. You're going to get back the shit. Your job is to keep pouring love in until a time comes when the majority of what you're getting back out is love. Most people don't have the time or the patience or the intestinal fortitude to go through life that way.
No.
Right. And so we build a bunch of houses made of hay, like the Three Little Pigs. And the first thing that comes, the first wind that blows it away. Yeah. And then we go, shit, I didn't do that right. I'm not good enough. I'll do something else. And they go, now it's not going to be straw or hay. It's going to be like branches or twigs.
Yeah.
You know? It's the same thing.
Because it lacks foundation. It lacks good foundation.
The foundation for everything in life is love.
Absolutely. We are everything is love around us. We are beings of love. I agree.
So we need to be willing to drive through the darkness as you talk about the shadows. The mushrooms are the psilocybin that brings up the shadows. It lets us work through them and see them and deal with them, bring light to them. Same thing in life and in love, right? I think psilocybin is the most intense form of love, or is a most intense form of love. Not maybe but
or like the most pure
love.
Form, yeah.
Why? Because it brings up everything unlike itself.
Wow, that's a lot to digest. Very true. And even something as simple as like the feelings we get of like love washing over us as we come up on the psilocybin, and it literally is love. It makes you feel love. It makes it changes your mood. It makes you feel happier. It lifts your spirit.
And for those people with massive trauma, it causes them massive amounts of distress, right? To feel that much love causes distress.
Because you're not used to it.
Repeat this. To feel pure love will cause you massive, massive distress and uncomfortability. There's no way around it. To feel pure love, right? That one thing that we desire most of all, from the day we
are born,
right? To the day
conceived, probably,
is the scariest thing we could ever experience, because it will bring up everything unlike itself in us. Until we are willing to accept the fact that we are pure love. We are pure love too, right? So here's the thing. Look in a mirror sometime and strip away. I tell people to do this naked on mushrooms typically. Stare in the mirror until you find every aspect of yourself that you love. And cry and scream and wail and get uncomfortable with every bit of you that is not that. Until you are. It's the scariest thing in the world for most people to look in the mirror for 5 seconds, let alone
on mushrooms. Yeah, because a lot of what we do is a superficial fronts put on. And even like the whole thing of like our sense of our constructed identification of ourselves is not really who we are. Who we are is, again, what you were saying, we are love. Our purest form is love. Who we become is a multitude and amalgamation of everyone else's beliefs, likes, dislikes, opinions around us, because we're shaped, right? It's cookie cutter, so we're shaped. It's very true.
I call it stripping the masks of trauma that other people have placed.
Like an onion.
Like an onion, but it's like masks of trauma. So masks of inauthenticity. How many people do you know that are not themselves, that are not authentically themselves?
99.9% of people I know.
Right. Why? Because masks of trauma, of inauthenticity have been placed upon us from society telling us this, or society telling us that, or our parents telling us that, whatever it is, whatever the language, whatever the thing that we heard that shaped us to become something was not us, right?
It was everything but us.
Something is like being clay molded, right? So we have to take that back to the beginning, kind of rebirth ourselves into this place of who am I really, without all that, without the training on what religion to believe in, without the training on whether I have money or don't have money, without the training on whether I'm worthy or not worthy, whether I'm lovable or not lovable, without any of the judgments on either side. No good, no bad, no, just blank, just like blackness. Zero sum. Now who are you?
You don't know, because you've never been in that state. You've been constantly being poured other people's belief system. And this, I've been saying this for a while, like your whole belief system, unless you literally accept it for yourself, is a watered down belief system of your parents, which is a watered down belief system of their parents, which is a watered down belief system. And it's like, until you adhere and believe your own views and say, hey, you know what, this is what I believe in because of this, you're not your own person. I'm sorry. And it's like, it could be something as simple as like, yo, your parents taught you religion, but you accepted it because of your own belief. That's different, as opposed to I'm just gonna blindly, and it doesn't even have to be religion. It could be spirituality. It could be literally anything. And if you blindly accept it, and I say this all the time because children are essentially blank slates, right? They're essentially blank slates, and they come into this world, and our preconceived notions, our belief systems, our religion, our politics gets placed onto them, and then they aren't their beliefs, right? They become idealistic versions of what their parents want, which is very interesting. And even so far as saying like the beliefs of like self-limiting beliefs and the beliefs of objectively, factually looking at your trauma and saying, and not being ashamed about it and not feeling bad about it and not, feeling guilt, remorse, all these negative emotions associated with it. That's the most important thing in healing trauma, because it's like, hey, I have to look in the mirror. I understand that I'm not where I want to be in life, and objectively say I don't like this, and this. I don't like how I show up for myself in life, and I have to change that. And to do that is the most powerful step in the human revolution, because it's like people will never get to that point unless they are literally pushed to the edge.
Right.
And they're sick of it. They're sick of how they live, and then they say, dude, I can't do this anymore. I am sick of my life. And that's what elicits powerful internal revolution, is when you get sick of your life and say, I can't.
Yeah, but why would you want to get to the place where you're sick of your life, right? Why would you want to get to that place?
Because you're comfortable.
Right. So here's the thing. Like if I was going to talk to your audience for a second, right?
Okay.
Ask better questions. People say there are no bad questions. There are really, really suboptimal questions and really great questions and ways to ask questions. I'm just going to say that in the beginning. Questions like, why me? That's a shitty ass question.
That's a stupid question. Yeah.
It's a shitty question. It doesn't give you an answer. It just leads you down a road to getting more problems, right?
Yep.
That's it. So, bad question. What is this trying to teach me? Better question.
Great question.
What am I learning from this is even better question. And how do I act upon what I'm learning so that I don't have to experience this again, kind of becomes
That's
a better
question.
question.
Wow, these are great. I'm actually gonna use these from now on. These are
So
great.
yeah, so that's the thing. People have forgotten to question. Even science, we're not allowed to question science anymore. Wonderful COVID. We're not allowed to question
Yeah,
scientists. We're not allowed to question the scientific process. We're not allowed to question authority. We're not allowed to question, excuse me, world. World is about questions. The
yeah.
world is about questions. I will never stop asking questions,
And
ever,
why
ever,
should you?
ever.
And
And
why should you?
neither should you. And so here's the thing: learning how to ask questions in a way that gives you a solution is a really important thing. And if you're able to do that and ask yourself questions, let's say you ask yourself one question per morning and one question per evening. That was designed specifically to move you forward in your life, in your business, in your emotional health, right? One question every morning. What do I need to do next? What's the most important thing for me to do next to drive whatever forward? And then wait for the answer to come. And every night, what am I grateful for? How did I
Absolutely.
make this world a better place today? What are the things that I want to process through my sleep from tonight, so that when I wake up in the morning, I'm fresh? So, go to bed every morning, say, what's next? Every night, thank you for that, right? Just those two things have set up a day completely different than most people who wake up, shit, I got to go to work. Shit, I'm home from work. What's on TV? What's to eat? And what's
Yeah.
fun, right? So this is most people's days. Change your day up a little bit. Ask yourself a question. What's next? What's next? What's the best thing for me to do today to move my life forward? Could be eating an ice cream. It could be going to the gym. It could be doing writing a paragraph of a book. It could be anything. As long as you're willing to wait for the response. I have a friend who used to go to the grocery store and he would stand at the entrance until his body started walking somewhere. And then he would stand in front of an aisle and he'd wait until his hand told him what thing he was going to eat, right? Because he was trying to be as authentic as he possibly could in the moment and not pre-plan or preconceive of anything. Be as present as
Wow.
possible
Mindful. Yeah, absolutely.
and as mindful as possible. So that's just a suggestion for the world, is to become more mindful and to be more present with who you are and where you're at, And from what you've told me, from your experience in the last couple of years, right, of going through this journey. And I'm so glad you were able to do this on your own, right?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Is
I wouldn't suggest it to my viewers watching. Do not like. I'm telling my story because it worked. Do not try what I'm saying at home. It's not a very safe thing unless you know what you're doing. Starting off.
it's not very safe. Like I said, I'm glad that you were able to do that. I highly recommend setting the setting is very important. The people you're with is very important. The intention that you're setting is very
Absolutely.
important. What's the purpose of this experience? What do you want to gain from it? What do you want to lose from it? What do
What
you
do you
want to
want to
let
leave behind?
go of?
Exactly.
You know,
Absolutely.
um, so those are all things that are great questions to ask at the beginning of that kind of a journey, that kind of an experience.
Absolutely.
But really, being mindful is the most important part, because if you're mindful, And if you're present, you could kind of
You're
breathe
aware.
through anything.
Absolutely. And you realize that life isn't happening it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And it's so crazy how being mindful in general, like there's so many ways, like now that on my day-to-day basis, like the human mind is the most powerful thing you'll ever come across. And I say this because I'm now, without the use of drugs, by the way, like just completely sober, waking up, and I'm rewiring my mind simply based off intention, asking the questions like that you did earlier. What's my intention for the day? What's my purpose? Am I making the world a better place? I was a strong believer in impact over income. Am I impacting people the right way? Am I helping them? Is my story, is what I'm doing adding value to the universe, or am I taking? So it's really interesting to see that based on these questions and the framework of your mind, you can literally rewire your mind into understanding your behavioral issues, your reactive issues, your codependency issues, like all these things and reactions and behaviors you have. Once you become aware of them, which usually takes a very strong catalyst, like a hero's dosage or something to become aware. After that, it's really like you could turn on that, I guess, that level of thinking and rewire your brain just with pure thought and intention alone. And I think that's the coolest part, is that the capabilities in everyone. That's my point.
Right.
I was maybe, yeah.
Yeah. What's really cool, chemically speaking, about
Mhm.
psilocybin in general is that it rewires neural pathways and
You're
increases serotonin receptors and kind of scrubs the receptors as well. So not only are there more serotonin receptors, but they're also
mhm.
clean so they could process the chemistry and the information in the chemistry better. And what that means is they say, on average, a single dose is equivalent to about 3 or 4 months of most antidepressants, single dose of microdose
Wow.
of
Yeah,
psilocybin.
I
So
agree.
if on a chemical level, right, that's the case. Let's say 5 or 10 well-stationed, ceremonies, journeys, experiences with a practitioner, with a shaman or a psychotherapist or somebody who knows how to help with
Maneuver the
specifics of
situation,
that
yeah.
kind of a ceremony, right? So that they could accelerate the experience, accelerate the experience for you, accelerate the benefit and the results, right?
Hmm.
Can probably wipe out most need for antidepressants, planetary, right?
Absolutely.
Now here's an interesting thing. Let's say we did 10,000 people, all top level engineers, senators. Yes, I just said it. Senators, impactors,
Said it,
people,
guys. Yeah.
people who are in charge of the world a little bit, right? And in charge of other people's experiences in the world. So top CEOs and so on. Let's say we just kind of isolate them out and have them do a well-planned, well-designed shamanic style journey like that. You think that these corporations, the CEOs of these corporations, would be able to continue to do some of the raping and pillaging that they do of the
Yeah.
environment, of the people, right? No. So my suggestion in the world is get the impactors, get the CEOs, get the people who are in charge to have an
Put it
experience. Just
down.
like ZDog MD said, get the medical professionals to have an experience, a well-designed, well-planned, well-safe, a safe space created to have this experience so that they can get an idea of what cannot be spoken of, because I can't explain the experience of feeling different after a ceremony, right? There's no words sufficient enough to share with somebody that my life is completely different this moment than it was that moment.
Yeah.
And so if we can get these people, we could literally have a
Heal the world.
massive impact globally in a very short period of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But then it comes down to the whole intention. It's like, do these people want to heal? Do they want to clean their souls? Do they want to become better people? And unfortunately, a lot of the times the answer is no. So
Sometimes. I tend to
Yeah.
believe something different. I
What do
believe
you
that they're
believe
not incentivized for it, and so they don't believe it. I think that in total, people are designed for survival, not for good or
in?
bad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Survival, not
Whatever
good or
that means in the
bad,
moment.
not plus minus, just survival.
No.
So if
Survival. Yeah.
survival is the
Fight or
key,
flight.
then there is no good or bad. There's just what is. And so if we can stop the need for survival, then we can start reconstructing through evolution that primordial, reptilian brain that is all about survival, and grow more of what's needed for empathy and compassion and executive function and so on and so forth. So we we live in a society that is triggering the shit out of everybody's
Oh yeah.
survival
It's
instincts all the
crazy.
time.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we can't separate what is from what could be without acknowledging here's what is, here's what could be, but here's what's in the way. Here's the barrier to that. So
Yeah.
let's get into the barrier and dissolve that while looking at the possibilities of what's possible for the future. So, it's like science, it's like math, it's like anything that's provable. As I started out this conversation at the beginning, everything in nature is provable by science. It's just a matter of learning the language that they're speaking in.
Yeah. Absolutely. Damn, there's a lot to digest and take in. Oh, this is a great podcast so far.
I know. Did you
Really
know?
quick,
Did
where can
you
the
know you're
viewers
going to
find
get
you?
it? Did you know you were getting into this when you messaged me on Twitter?
Honestly, somewhat, but not like this in depth. And I'm really grateful because I've never really had someone else speak to their their success story using psilocybin as a medicine or using LSD, whatever it is. And I think that's very impactful for not only my viewers, because the most, I guess, the biggest piece of evidence that I supplied with my alongside with my story is literally myself. Like looking at other people's perception and like their interpretation of where I was at 2 years ago and what I've built for myself now. It's not even night and day. It's like a different realm completely. And it's like for people to acknowledge that and understand that, there's no way you can deny what I'm saying. Like even if you think it's scientific pseudoscience mumbo jumbo and you think it's bullshit, there's no way just based off like physical facts and the reality I was living and I'm living now, you can discredit what I'm saying. And I think that's really important because now you add validity with the science behind it. You add validity with other success stories. You add validity and credibility in how these are actual natural practices being used across the world and how they're helping others. And I think that's the most important part is about being open to it, right? Because it took me a long time and a lot of YouTubing ayahuasca ceremonies for heroin addicts. And I was like, God bless, I've never been addicted to anything that serious, but it gave me hope. And it said, hey, you don't have it as bad as this person. And for me, like it's a saying, like someone out there has done, it's my favorite saying actually. Someone out there has done more with less than what I have. And it means a lot to me because I come from a very like poor upbringing. I've come up with a very little amount. So always giving my thanks, right? And understanding, hey, I don't have it as bad as this person. They made more out of what the less they had. So it's really interesting to see that now other people will agree and say, hey, I don't have addiction issues. I don't have drug abuse issues, but hey, I could have anger issues, or hey, I could have self-loathing and pity issues, or codependency issues. I could have. There's a lot of ways trauma affects different people, but it's like now it's understanding and saying, you know what, this isn't my natural or like my favorite modality of medicine, but I'm gonna give it a shot because I want to get better. And it's about keeping that mind open enough to be open to receiving these opportunities and saying, I think that's the most important thing. So thank you for that because that's revolutionary in the world today. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I've been a body worker for my entire career. And
Mhm.
I started going to a therapist when I was 7 for being molested and raped. So, first therapist,
Okay.
7, first hypnotherapist, 9 years old. So, I've gone to LifeSpring, Landmark, Est. I've gone to SciWorld. I've gone to, I don't know, MITT, Mastery in Transformational Training. I've done more self-improvement things in my life probably than most people, because I was born doing it because of the trauma that. And yet none of those things were permanent fixes for the cognitive issues, right? That were not cognitive, they were stuck in my body. And so that's where I just re-emphasize to people. This isn't where the trauma lives.
So, absolutely not.
It's all in here.
This is how we perceive the trauma, and why that is important is because we perceive trauma very, again, on a good or bad, on a plus minus. And you can't look at life like that, period, because life is not life. Nature doesn't care about plus or minus. Nature doesn't care. It just cares about the predatory chain. It cares about survival, and that's it. Nothing else. So when you start looking at your traumas with plus or minus, or like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me, this is so sad. That's when your mind, and the mind's the enemy if you let it run astray. That's when the mind starts telling you how to feel about your trauma. And trauma is objective. Like, this is going to be a very difficult pill to swallow for a lot of my viewers, because one, it was a difficult pill for me to swallow, but trauma is a fact. A traumatic incident is a fact.
It's a fact.
The trauma you receive, it's a fact. It's a fact in the sense there's a when, a where, a why, and a how. Like, it happened. It's an event that occurred. Trauma is what we develop as a reaction that our ego is trying to wrap our head around the fact. And again, it's the mind. It's the mind trying to understand trauma.
Yeah, let me go back. So the trauma itself, if you get hit in the arm, you had a trauma whether you think it or not, right? You could be having fun and a friend hits you in the arm, you still have a trauma. So a trauma is anything that impacts you, good or bad.
Okay.
Impact equals trauma. Okay. So whether you're emotionally impacted, physically impacted, I got in a car accident, right? Mm-hmm. So I have trauma to my body that is absolutely not in my head, right?
Yeah.
So the processor, your brain, okay, processes information from your body, your memory, based on the software that has been put into it for the years of your life, okay? Mushrooms is like an upgrade in your software. Shifts the software and the processing system to a little bit different frequency, right? So now the same trauma has a different affect on your emotions, has a different affect on your body. It can actually be released from your physical body because it's not in your mind, okay? So yes, how we perceive, but if you were raised to perceive a drunk father hitting you as absolutely normal and average and not have that as a traumatic experience, then over time, it doesn't become traumatic experience anymore. It just becomes an automatic pattern, right? You didn't know anything different. Nobody showed you anything different. So you can't have a trauma from that, an emotional trauma, because it's the only thing you know.
Yeah.
As soon as somebody shows you something different, like a dad who's hugging their kid, and you see the difference between what you have and what you got and what's available, that's where the mental trauma comes in. The mental impact is on a realization that what you have is different than what somebody else has.
Exactly. It's like a triggering comparison. Like, wait, this is not normal. This is not normal what I went through.
It's the comparison.
Yeah. Wow.
So if we can get to it, not worrying about any of the details, not worrying about the story, not caring about the details of the story, and just get to the places in the body where the shit lives and let it go with primal noise, which is what energy is and what emotion is. Primal noise. You get hit and it's not a language. It's a noise. So you
Yeah.
start making noise, you start making sounds, you start breathing deeply, and and getting that stuff out that way and physically moving is very, very, very different than trying to rehash a story in a psychotherapy kind of way,
Yeah.
where none of that story means anything anymore. We already know.
No.
We already
What
know the
happened?
world is traumatizing. We know it. But
Yeah, like
you gotta get
it's
it
the
out of our
oldest
system, out of
narrative. It's
ourselves.
out of our being. Like it's literally like again what you said with love. It has a lot to do with vibrations and frequencies. The vibration and frequency of love is hard. So it's very high, and it's like we have to literally change what we think we are, and that affects our DNA. It does, because if now we're operating at a higher level, at a higher frequency, right? We're happier, we're eating healthier, and it's like until you, like, I don't know how to, I guess, place this into words, but until you see the benefits of living life like that, you will never adhere to it. You'll never accept it.
Well, we also got to stop comparing to what everybody else had, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my hand. I don't know about you,
No, sure.
but me telling somebody that they're bad for having been born with a silver spoon in their house and doesn't do the world any more good than if the rich dude
No.
is telling the homeless dude how bad he is for being homeless.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to stop this separation of thought
Of humanity.
based on labels, based on things that really don't mean anything. Mother Teresa is famous for having had no money but making a massive impact on the world. Same with
Mhm.
Gandhi, same with Martin Luther King. I mean, the people who have made the massive impacts on the world are not necessarily the people with all the funds, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about that. It's just about who do you want to be? Really?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be?
That's
Who do
it's
you
because
want to be? What
that's a
things do
great,
you
great,
like
great
doing?
point.
What's the world you want to see for your kids in the
And
next
not the world that
years?
you've been given to believe to be
Right.
yours. What
Just
you actually
if you could make it up however you wanted to. One of my sayings, we made this shit up, we could do better. That's for everything in the world, from money to government to systems to everything. Everything. Hotels. We can make hotels better than we've made them. We can make buildings better than we've made them. There's not a
because it's
single thing on this planet that we have created that we can't
that
do
we
better.
I absolutely agree, because everything that is a byproduct of the human mind is just as susceptible to error as the human mind is, right? Which is very susceptible to error. So it's like everything we do, we can do better. Even us.
Exactly.
People.
So let's start doing. Let's start doing better. Let's stop asking questions like why me and start asking like, well, what's next? What do I do next? How do I make that better? What's going to be? What do I want it to look like? If I could have it, however I want it, how would I want it? Let me start writing that down. Let me start breaking it up into little sections. Let me start planning that. Let me chunk it down from a big thought to a small action step. But yeah, that's how life changes. That's how life grows. That's how people move on in the world, is by thinking in this way. What we've done over the last 50 years is we've like basically sat still going, I hope everybody else that was putting things in place are going to have those things in place good.
Yeah.
I hope the government that, set up our food system isn't trying to poison us. I hope our food supply is going to actually give us nutrition. I hope our medical
Yeah.
system will actually take care of the health of our people. But what
And
are the
not poison
results
us.
that we look? Objectional facts. What's the result that we can see? None of what we've said is going to get better has gotten better. It's gotten worse. We've gotten better technology and worse outcomes. Why?
The bells and whistles, right? Everything looks better, but nothing
It's
on
all
underneath the
shiny.
surface is actually better.
It's all shiny,
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's like, when do we stop what is and start moving towards what could be? And I think yesterday is the right answer. But if yesterday isn't the answer, then today sure as shit is.
Yeah,
Right?
because tomorrow's too far away. It might not come.
Exactly. So let's ask the right questions. Let's start getting people healthy again. Well, mentally, physically, and if mushrooms and if psilocybin is the thing to take, ketamine, the thing to take people out of living in a state of chronic, constant fight or flight and stress response and fear and all that, and start bringing the love back, then fuck, all power to the medicine of nature.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
respect sacred is what I would say to anybody who's doing anything really. Respect sacred. Medicine is sacred. Plants are sacred.
Absolutely.
Even alcohol is sacred when used correctly for medicinal purposes rather than drug use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tinctures, it's used, as carrier, it's used to cleanse, it's used all kinds of ways.
A glass of red wine a day, yeah.
I'm tired of this label system that we've put on everything of good and bad, do it or don't do it. And if you do it, you're this person. And if you don't do it, you're that person.
But it's so funny how that's just like a projection of the human mind, because the human mind is, again, it's split, right, into two. The good wolf, the bad wolf, the yin yang. It's a dichotomy of soul. So because we as a people and as, I guess, an animal, we are intrinsically looking for the split in everything, because the split is within us. And I think that's why we give everything a plus minus valuation. We give everything a good, bad, a yin yang, is because that's how we see life. But everything in its actuality, it just is. It just is, right?
It just is. And that thing that we do is driving us fucking insane.
Oh yeah.
It's driving us mad. It's setting us up for failure. It's literally, we can look at both sides as an objectable, intelligent human being and say, I like that side better than that side, right? You can look at somebody who, say, is a meth head and go, like somebody who's really deep in meth, no teeth, skinny, all that stuff, acne everywhere. And then somebody who's not a meth head and go, oh, I'd rather be that person.
It's like, right? You don't know if that person's like doing crack or something on the side. It's because it's not visible. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is, who are you? Where's the masks that you've been putting on? How do you take those masks off yourself so that you can be a human being that's doing the things that you would naturally do in life, like art and philosophizing, engineering and math, and loving on the world and on people without the concern of money or control or power, right? It's all a convoluted mess when we get into it, but the fact of the matter is that we as a people have a choice right now. We could walk with love or we could walk with fear. We could walk to the future or we could run from the past.
Wow, that's powerful. It's very powerful. I absolutely agree. I think that might be a good time to wrap up. Ari, this was great. Thank you. I would love to do this again for sure if you're open to that. This is very good. That's very good. Do you wanna kind of just quickly give the viewers a quick rundown of where we could find you, and I'll have all the links listed in the bio below.
Yeah, sure. So Create a New Tomorrow is the podcast, and that can be found basically anywhere podcasts are found, including on YouTube. Achieve Health USA and createanewtomorrow.com are the websites. And I can be found at Ari Gronich at everywhere.com because I'm the only one.
Nice. That's very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ari. Do you want to just give, I guess, one saying, one quote, one valuable takeaway from today's conversation, or just like that you want to leave the viewers with?
Yeah. So what I was just saying is we made this shit up and we can do better.
We make it better.
Right. But the most important part, we can walk with fear or we can walk with love. We could run from our past or we can walk to our future.
We always have a choice.
We have a choice.
always have a choice, and I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you
So
so
let's
much,
start.
Ari.
Yeah, so let's start collaborating for success
Yeah,
instead of gathering to complain.
absolutely. Absolutely agree. Thank you so much, Ari. Guys, you can find this podcast on the Learn Podcast, and the video will be up soon. You can find all of Ari's links in the bio below. And this has been the Learn Podcast, where every day you learn something new or earn some money. Otherwise, you take the L. Thank you, guys. I'm going to just get the recording off really quick.